Good morning, church. How are you all doing? It's good to see you on this rainy Sunday morning. I don't know about y'all, but I know sometimes that can be a little bit of an adventure to get out in. This morning, I did some activities this morning, so I got to beat the rain, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I want to introduce myself. My name is Shannon Ramsey. I'm with an organization, Families for Families, and I'm going to be talking about that this morning, but a little bit bigger, and I know y'all just want to know all about me, but we're going to get to the Word, and we're going to get to the more important things in a minute. But I'd just like to introduce myself by just saying thank you to Calvary. Number one, thank you for allowing me to be here this morning. Vincent, thank you so much for the opportunity to share. I want to say thank you to Calvary. I don't know if y'all remember, but every December there's a big offering that gets taken up. Anybody know what the name of that one is? Lottie Moon Christmas offering. So I want to say thank you because for 10 years you helped put bread on my family's table as we served as one of your International Mission Board missionaries in South Asia. So I just want to say thank you for that. Yeah, that's on you guys. Thank y'all so much for participating in that. And so that was a part of the journey that the Lord had for us as we were just trying to seek Him and follow Him on this journey called life that we all get on. In 2019, my family and I relocated back here to Georgia. I'm originally from just down the road. For those of y'all who don't know, y'all live in the big city, you know what I'm saying? I grew up down in Statesboro, so we come down here to go to the beach and get good eating. Yes. And so I met my wife at Georgia Southern. And unfortunately, please do not hold this against me, but whenever I was in high school, Calvary was one of our rivals as I was a Southeast Bullet Yellow Jacket back in the day. So it's kind of cool to be back home. God brought us back here. We have three children. Our oldest two, my oldest son is 22, my daughter is 20. My oldest son, we just got to see him graduate from the RTC with the U.S. Navy, so he is now a sailor. And Greg and I was kind of joking with Greg earlier. I said, I know you military guys got your little military thing y'all got going on back and forth, but at the end of the day, he's mine, and I'm a proud Navy dad. So anyway, it's exciting to be that. My daughter's doing well. My youngest, we adopted from China when we lived overseas. And so he is 11, so we affectionately call him the reset button. As we were and could have been empty nesters, but that was not the plan that God had for us. But in the midst of that, I was trying to figure out what to do. And John and Kelly Crunkleton are friends of mine. Met them when I came back. And we had a similar journey as we got to meet one another as they came off the mission field as well. And in 2019, when we came back, I know John and I have had some of these conversations. It's like, okay, now what? You know, the old adage that I ran into with folks, okay, you were a missionary for a decade. What are your marketable skills? You know, and so it's kind of like, what is your next step? What do you do? I did not feel like being in a local church setting would have been beneficial at that moment, just because of where I was at mentally, from how to do things, and I might get fired pretty quick because I make too many changes and do too much too fast and all those kind of things. And so I said, you know, God, what do you have for me? And a good friend of mine reached out to me, and I've known him for years. And he started this organization, Families for Families, in the metro Atlanta area. And he reached out to me and my wife and said, I know you guys are looking to go down to Statesboro and be in that South Georgia part of the state. Would you be willing to take Families for Families down to that part of the state and help us expand our vision for who we are and what we do in that region? And through much prayer and just seeking the Lord, he said, we were like, yes, okay, we're going to go do that. And so in 2019, we said, yes, we're going to do that. In 2020, we decided the best time in the world to start any kind of a nonprofit business, any kind of venture, was 2020. You know, because we all know what happened in 2020. You know, you go, oh, we're going to go start something, and then everything shuts down. But the Lord had His hand on on our efforts and on what we wanted to do. As we were able to launch, John and Kelly were actually one of our first families that got licensed in early 2021 as a result of a lot of that. But we at Families for Families, who are we? What do we do? Well, let me tell you, our mission is connecting with local churches to recruit and support faith-based families that can provide loving homes to children in the Georgia foster care system. Let me say that again. Our mission is connecting with local churches to recruit and support godly, faith-based families that can provide loving homes to children in the Georgia foster care system. And sometimes that can be this big umbrella of foster care. What does all that mean? What does all that look like? Well, let me kind of boil it down to you at Families for Families, what we do. At Families for Families, what we do is we license foster families. If you're sitting here in this room, like John and Kelly were years ago, they said, we want to be foster parents. You have a couple of options. Your first option is you could go to DFACS, and you could get licensed through the DFACS office in the county and regional office, or you can come to a private agency. And so those are the two pathways that the state of Georgia have for you to become a licensed foster family. And so we are a faith-based licensing agency. What that means is we keep Jesus at the center of everything that we do. At the end of the day, the whole process, our staff, we love Jesus, we love the church, we love his mission, and we love kids. And we want kids to be in faith-based homes. Why is that important? Why is that important? Because these kids who come into the Georgia foster care system, they come from very difficult places. They come with a lot of trauma. They come with a lot of difficulties. And if they can be in a gospel-centered home, so that for the season that they're in this traumatic period, they can have gospel-centered care, that is going to do more good for them than any warm bed or any warm meal that they'll ever get. Because guess what? If that is all we can provide, a soft bed and a warm meal, we have completely missed the message of the gospel and the message of eternity for that child. Because it will be a whole lot worse if they don't get the gospel. And so we want faith-based families to help us care for these kids. You say, well, why would DFACS call you? Because they don't have enough foster homes. I'm going to go through some statistics and I'm going to go through some numbers here in a few minutes. But why would they call? Because they don't have enough foster homes. We know that the church has people in it who hear about these things and they want to engage in this work. And they just don't know how. They don't know how to figure it out. They don't know how to navigate to that. So we want to give them that pathway so that they can do that. On the back end of that, when those families are with our agency, we have staff that they are on call for our foster families. So when our foster families have a need, they are responding to it immediately. How does that work with the church? That's when we help work with the church to know how to care for foster families. Here's the beautiful thing about Calvary. Y'all may or may not know this, but you all launched into this caring for foster families a couple years ago, and you guys put together a care community system to care for foster families, and whether you know it or not, you have been caring for multiple of my foster families for the last couple of years, and I want to say thank you for that. I want to say thank you for that, because through connecting with Pam Grimes, she said, she called me one day, she goes, Shannon, I got these care communities, I need foster families to help care, for them to care for. I said, Miss Pam, I'm glad you called, let me help you out with that. And then we were able to make those partnerships so that your care communities have foster families that they're caring for. It was a couple of weeks ago, I got the privilege of coming. Linda invited me to your ladies' conference, and Vincent, you got to leave early, but I was the lone male sitting at the front. And was it a little weird being one guy in the midst of 150, 60 ladies? Yeah, that was a little weird. I'll never forget, there was one lady, I heard him in the background, Linda, I heard somebody, there's a man down there. And it was kind of like, oh, this is kind of weird, but it was so fun to get to share. But one of my foster parents were there. It was one of the families that you guys have been caring for, and they got to get, your care team got to share about all y'all have been doing. And so, listen, this is how we work together. This is how we work together. We need foster families, and those foster families need care. Now, there are other things that we do as an agency along the way, but at the end of the day, what we know is this, is that foster families need to have support. Listen, 50% of every foster family in the state of Georgia, according to state statistics, 50% quit within the first year. You know why that is? Because they feel like they've not had the support they need. That equates to one placement. They didn't have the support they need, and they say, we're gonna quit and give up. You know what? So we just recently, as an agency, got it's called COA accredited. It's an accreditation agency to help bolster our efficiency in what we do. And so it's forced us to keep a lot of records and keep a lot of statistics. And one of the cool statistics that we've been able to pull together is this: the state's retention rate is 50% after the first year. You know what ours is? 92%. 92%. Why? Because we work real hard to do what I'm doing right now. I've been speaking in a church somewhere, with the exception of 2 weeks, since July 4th weekend, doing what I'm doing right now. Because the church needs to hear about what's going on in the community and how they can participate in that. Now, how did we start? Where did our vision come from? Where did our founder come from? Where did all this drum up from? Was it this guy who went and became a social worker and just wanted to do? No. He and his wife became foster parents, and they just said, hey, we think this can be done better. He was a construction worker, and he was like, we think this can be done better. And it all started with this little girl right here. It all started with this little girl right here. They received a phone call from DFACS 5 minutes after they became a licensed foster parent. And DFACS said, hey, we've got a little girl who needs help. Abby was found behind a dumpster in downtown Atlanta and left there. A year later, they received another telephone call, and they got a call for this little girl. This is Ashley. Y'all see that little puckered lip? That's what Ashley's going to feel like if you don't support foster children and help out. Okay, just so y'all know. That's how she's going to feel if y'all don't help. But anyway, listen, Ashley was born, mom was incarcerated, but Ashley has a number of mental defects. Her left side of her brain doesn't talk to the right side of her brain. Ashley and Abby are both teenagers now and doing well, but they eventually adopted them as they grew up. And they're now in their home and they're doing well, but Ashley will probably never leave home. Ashley's condition is one of those that if she were to come in here this morning and meet you all, you would become her very best friend, and she will go anywhere in the world with you. That's just who she is. Oh, you're my best friend. And so, but she is amazing. And Wayne and Kelly Noggle have made it their mission to make sure that children like Abby and Ashley have somewhere to go. And so that has become our mission and our vision to do this. It started in a little town called Loganville. Here's a map of the state of Georgia. It started in a little town called Loganville, and then we have broken the state up into 10 regions. As of today, we currently have 9 offices around the state of Georgia. We started in 2017. Last night, 272 foster children in the state of Georgia slept in our faith-based families' homes last night. Last night in this area, out of this local office, we call it our southeast office. It's that blue off to the side there, to the east there. 57 children slept in our beds last night, right here in our own backyards. Are we caring for foster kids? Absolutely. I'm on text threads with my staff, and I see what's going on all day long. We had stuff going on yesterday. We placed 2 kids yesterday in one of our foster homes. So we are constantly caring for these kids, and they're in our care, and we constantly need homes for them. Now that number there, 12,239, that is the number of children in the Georgia foster care system right now, across the state. 12,239. Now that number goes up and down every day, but that is roughly the number of kids currently in foster care. And here's what we've got to remember, church, is that those numbers are not just numbers. Those are souls that God created in His image. And those are children who are in a state-run system through no fault of their own. And they need the church to come alongside and take care of them and help be a part of that. Now, where does that start? That really kind of starts for us to realize that the enemy has a plan for families. The enemy has a plan for families across the board. Listen, 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8 says this, "Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour." Listen, you know what the enemy has found out? That he is after the family. We can trace every social ill in our culture, in our society, to the breakdown of the family. We can trace it all back to the breakdown of the family. And what's even more specific, and we go to the next slide, what's even more specific is the target is on the dads. The enemy has figured out that if you can take the dad out of a home, you can tear a home apart. Men, this is a reality that we live in. This is a reality that God has placed on us to caring for our families and for the children and for children at large. And the enemy realizes that if we can take that out, we can destroy everything. Because here are the realities that we live in. These are secular statistics. These are things outside the church. But 63% of youth suicide, they come from fatherless homes. 90% of all homeless and runaway children, they come from fatherless homes. 85% of all children who show behavior disorders, they come from fatherless homes. 80% of rapists with anger problems come from fatherless homes. 71% of high school dropouts, they come from fatherless homes. 75% of all adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers, they come from fatherless homes. The enemy has realized if you take out the dad, you can destroy a culture and a society. And you know how to flip these statistics? Put a dad in the home. Just put a dad in the home. And you know what's amazing? It does not have to be the biological father. It just simply has to be a dad. God, for whatever reason, in his divine ordination of the family, of civilization, he has put a special calling on us, men, to care for our families, to be protectors, and to care for kids and care for the family. And this is not something new. This goes all the way back to Exodus. If we go back to Exodus chapter 22, we read this. "You shall not mistreat any widow or fatherless child. If you do mistreat them and they cry out to me, I will surely hear their cry." Listen, as Moses is trying to set up the nation of Israel right after the Exodus, after they've gone out of Egypt, in chapter 20, we get the 10 Commandments. And as he's setting things up, he's kind of setting things up in such a way that the people of God, it is their responsibility to care for the widows and the orphans. And the widow and the orphan, you'll see them together in Scripture as you go throughout it. But as you look at that, it is the people of God's responsibility. I have people tell me all the time, well, the state's just messed up. The state's just, well, you know why? Because they were never intended to care for children. It was never the state's responsibility. I've been in some congregation with some folks, and they come from churches that have been around a long time, like you guys have here. And it's interesting to hear some stories. They say, "Well, you know where they used to bring the kids in the community? The doors of the church. You know where kids used to get left? The doors of the church." Listen, God has a design for his people to step in when there's fatherlessness there. Is to step in to help care for that. Listen, we see this pattern that God is talking about caring for the fatherless, and it comes out in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 17. "Learn to do good, seek justice, correct oppression, and bring justice to the fatherless. Plead the widow's cause." Listen, Isaiah is speaking out right here because the nation of Israel has been in decline for a long time. The southern kingdom of Judah has been spiraling out of control morally, ethically, and the culture has just been divulging into sin. And God is trying to remind his people through the prophet Isaiah, this is what I have called you to. This is what I need you to do. Do you know what they were doing in Isaiah's day with children? They were offering them on the altar of Molech. Every year, our church, we read through the Bible, and we have a plan that we do that with. this year, things every year just kind of stick out as you go through that process. And this year for me, it just kind of popped as I kept reading about the way that the nation of Israel and then the nation of Judah, the way that they descended into debauchery and to just really just total immorality, it just popped out to me. And they offered their children on the altar. And they offered the children to Molech. And a great battle was going on, and the king offered his son to the pagan gods to try to get relief. They were offering their kids up and sacrificing them. And so Isaiah pops back around, and God is reminding the people through him, bring justice to the fatherless. Care for them. And we see everything kind of culminate in the New Testament. It's the very famous passage that has to do with caring for widows and orphans is in James chapter 1, verse 27. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained from the world. Pure and undefiled religion is this, caring for orphans and widows. The more and more I've mulled over that and the more and more I've worked in this work, you know what I've come to realize? I've come to realize that what pure and undefiled religion is. Pure and undefiled religion is this, is there's no return on investment in your effort, for your efforts. Working with kids, especially kids in foster care, you're not going to get anything back from them. They can't give anything to you. It is a total self-sacrificial work that you continually pour yourself out. I see my foster families all the time pouring themselves out, rearranging their schedule, rearranging their lives, buying new vehicles, doing new things to care for the kids that God has called them to care for. I'll never forget one of our foster families in one of our other offices. The foster dad was one of my teenagers. I used to be a youth pastor years ago, and he was one of the kids in my youth group. He and I were chatting one day, and I remember early on as he was fostering, he had one of these really, really, really nice Jeeps, okay? He had all the sound system in it. He had the big tires. It was cool. And I like Jeeps. I don't have one. I've never had one. I've heard they're horrible to keep up with maintenance. It doesn't matter. They still look cool. Take that top down and ride around. They just look cool. He had a cool Jeep. He became a foster. He had 2 biological children. And then they fostered 4 more children. So now they've got a good-sized family. And finally one day, I see him, and he sends me a text message of a picture of a passenger van. He goes, Shannon, I got rid of my Jeep because my life just got rearranged because we're taking care of these kids, because that's what's more important, is taking care of these kids. And I've had a number of my foster families throughout the years. They just like, we need a bigger car because we're going to take care of more kids. We're going to make sure we have room for them. We're going to make sure that we are rearranged for that. Pure and undefiled religion is this. It's simply pouring ourselves out to care for these who can't care for themselves and can't give us anything in return. Listen, I'll tell you what. It's amazing to me that these foster kids who come into care, they're gonna tell their foster parents, I hate you. You're not my mom and dad. I'll never forget. I got a story from one of my foster dads. It was a 3-year-old little girl, 3 or 4-year-old little girl. She jumped up on the toilet and she just started wiggling herself and goes, you're not my mommy, and just all this stuff. And so they're not giving anything back. And then some of them even cuss at them and cuss our foster parents out. And that's just the 4-year-old, that's not even the teenager, because that's all they know. But these kids need families that will come around them and care for them so that they can have what they need to hopefully become faithful members of society. And more importantly than that is hopefully families to come around them to share the goodness of the gospel with them so that they can have eternity with Christ and have a purpose-filled life that we talk about every Sunday, talk about the gospel, the gospel, the gospel. Well, they need the gospel. And the only way they're going to get it is if they have homes that are sharing it with them. For us at Families for Families, you know what a win is? I told you, we just had some kids come into care yesterday. We had some come in on Friday. You know where those kids are at this morning? They're in church. They're in somebody's children's ministry, getting loved on by the people of God. in such a way that they've never been loved on before. That is a win for Families for Families. We talk about all these other numbers. We could talk about all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, these kids are in gospel-centered locations so they can hear the gospel and be cared for appropriately. And listen, church, it is our responsibility to be a part of that process. This is a solvable problem. I talk about over 12,000 kids in foster care. Do you realize there are 22,000 Protestant churches in the state? That is a solvable problem by the church. That is a solvable problem. There are twice as many churches in care in the state as there are kids. And the reality of the darkness that goes on around us, that we don't even realize it. We don't even realize it. The darkness here in the state of Georgia is this. 2 girls who were abused and neglected and placed in DFACS custody could be sold or end up in sex trafficking this week before you show back up for church next week. This week in the state of Georgia, statistically speaking, 8.6 kids will go missing from the DFACS foster care system here in the state of Georgia. Greg, you're a strapping military guy. I like military guys. I mentioned I'm a Navy dad. Anyway, let me ask you a question. You guys got a school here on the backside of it, and all this thing's going on. Let me ask you a question. Not just the school, but let's just say here at the church. Greg, what would happen this week if one of your kids or one of these other folks' kids went missing this week? All hands on deck. All hands on deck. Exactly right. WTOC, WSAV, you be everywhere talking about them, right? Nobody's looking for these kids. Nobody's looking for them. Nobody's hunting them down. Nobody's getting on the news talking about them. Nobody's looking for these kids. 7 girls will turn 18. They'll age out of foster care, and 5 of these girls will be pregnant within a year and put kids back in the foster care system. Age out, what does that mean? At 18, kids they age out of foster care because they're legally adults, and they essentially become homeless. I don't know about any of you guys, and I know if there's an 18-year-old in here, I apologize if this is offensive, but listen, there's still a lot of growing to do at 18. I got 2 that are in their 20s, and they're still growing. You know what I mean? There's still a lot of growth that needs to take place, but 18 is not the age that just like you're magically an adult and you got everything figured out. They need help. 7 boys will turn 18, age out of foster care. 5.6 of those boys, they'll go to jail for survival crimes. Families for Families, our agency, we will deny 46 kids a foster home because of lack of foster homes. We will say no 46 times a week. That is our average. Atlanta will remain one of the highest cities in the nation for sex trafficking. 70% of girls in sex trafficking, they come through foster care. You hear people talking about wanting to deal with homelessness, wanting to deal with sex trafficking and homelessness and these things. Foster care is upstream from those activities. You start helping take care of those issues, you're helping take care of the bigger need in our culture and our society. And right here around us, these are the counties that we serve here locally in our southeast region. Right here in Chatham County, the statistic I have on our map is 276. Really, there's about 300 kids in the foster care system in this county right here. And there's about 300 churches here in this county. Again, if the churches will help us, walk with us. Listen, even if there's one potential foster family in this room today, that is a win. And then the work that you're already doing, Calvary, keep doing it. Provide those care communities. Provide those meals for those foster families. Continue to provide that support because that is going to keep them in the game for a long period of time. That's going to keep them in the game to care for multiple kids or care for kids until their permanency is cared for. And what do we at Families for Families work really hard to bring to the table is getting involved. We put on date nights every month in this area for our foster families, every month. We bounce those activities between here, Rincon, and Statesboro. So throughout the year, we're putting on a date night for our foster families. What if Calvary could help us put on a date night one month next year? Providing food and volunteers to help care for kids. We could help partner together to do something like that. You all are already doing meals. You all are already doing babysitting for a lot of the families that you're supporting. I know you are a people of prayer. I know you're praying for them. Handyman. Listen, several of our families, when they get new kids into care, I have learned how to put a crib together and ride in about 30 minutes. I could put a crib together right in about 30 minutes. And John and Kelly Crunkleton were one of my first experiences with that. Because when I called them several years ago in 2021 to say, hey, we've got 2 kids that need a home. We were literally in the parking lot behind us. I met with them, dropped the kids off with them as they were caring for them and getting that first step together for them. And then I looked at them and they go, we don't have a crib. I said, that's okay. I got one in the truck. Is your house open? And they said, yep, good to go. I said, all right. So I left the kids here and I drove out to their house. And that was one of my early cribs. So that one probably took me about an hour. But I figured it out since then. I kind of figured the process out. And I put a crib together in their home that night so that when they got home, they already had a place for their foster kids to have somewhere to go that evening. And I can't tell you, I have done that over and over and over. And we need people who could come alongside us and potentially be on call or just be ready to help when the need arises. Or let's say our foster families, they're dealing with things like doctor's appointment, therapy appointments. They're dealing with court appointments. They're dealing with all these other things, caring for the kids and visits with the biological parents and all these different things going on. What if, sometimes their grass may get out of hand. I know we're coming out of that season right now, but their grass might get out of hand. And what if the youth group went over and cut their grass, just to give them a help, along the way. But there's a lot of different things like that. And there's some of you who have befriended foster families. I encourage you to continue to do that so that you can maybe babysit for them and care for them. We at the agency, we provide a birthday bag to every one of our foster kids throughout the year. And so we work together to collect those things. We do diaper drives. Listen, we don't collect clothes. We don't collect, those kind of items. We don't really collect cribs or those bigger items like that. We collect diapers and wipes. Why is that important? Because for the 57 kids that we are currently caring for here in this area, about half of them are in diapers. And so our caseworkers will then go to our caseworkers have to go visit those homes once a month. And so when they show up and visit those homes, they're carrying diapers, they're carrying wipes, they're helping with whatever else comes up. I get calls all the time. Hey, Shannon, our families need this. And then it's my job to go figure out how to make that happen and figure out how to get all hands on deck so we can make those things home. We also need what's called respite homes. Now, that's a fully licensed foster family that you only take kids in for a short period of time so that our other foster families can have a break. Listen, at the end of the day, we want to make sure our foster families succeed. And if we're doing what we're doing and you're doing what you're doing, that's going to happen. If we're doing what we're doing and you're doing what you're doing, that's going to happen. And we want to continue to build and foster this partnership together so that we can have foster families succeed. So we have them succeed. And I mentioned earlier about my own family. And you say, Shannon, why are you so passionate about this? For me, it started with this little guy. James was 2 years old whenever we adopted him from China. He's now 11. We had a cross-country meet up in the Atlanta area yesterday. I'm so proud of him. He got like 4 minutes off of his PR for his run. I'm so proud of him. But I never got over saying yes to that little boy. And I know there are other little boys and girls all throughout our community. We do not have to go overseas to help be a part of this, be a solution to this problem, because they are right here in our own backyard. As I mentioned to you, there are roughly 300 right here in your own county that need help, that need support, and need godly homes to care for them. Listen, we're going to have a meeting after this where I'm going to answer a lot of questions, have some next steps. But listen, if you're just trying to figure out what this looks like for you, listen, give me a telephone call. Listen, here's a slide of me. Just don't worry about the picture, but take a picture of the phone number and email. But that's my information. Take a picture of it. You call me. We'll come up with a plan, and we'll figure something out. If you want to be a foster parent, call me. Come up. Let's talk after this. And if you've been thinking about it, praying it. And listen, I want to tell you something. Not everybody's called to be a foster parent. And I don't want you to feel any guilt about me talking about this morning. Because guess what? I know not everybody's called to it. You know how I know that? Because I was a missionary in a third world country for 10 years. And not everybody's called to do that either. But we can do something. Out on my table in the back, I got these little puzzle pieces. And they say, what can I say yes to? Listen, there's this big tapestry that God wants us to be involved in all kind of ministries, okay? This is just the one that God's got me working in. But all kind of ministries. But this morning, my question to you is, don't let's think through all the things we can't do, because we can put that laundry list together quick. And I know we can. But what can we say yes to? Have you ever been asked to be a foster parent? If not, I'm just asking. I don't know what God wants to do. That's between you and him. Have you ever thought about supporting them? Linda and her team here and Pam, they'll put you to work. I promise you. They will put you to work. They've got things that need to be done. You can say yes. Want to get some diapers to help us out? You can say yes. What can we say yes to? This morning, the bigger thing that really encompasses who we are as a church is we have the gospel. And you may be going, Shannon, you are absolutely nuts in what you're talking about this morning. Why would anybody want to do that? I'll give you the same answer that I gave my mother-in-law when she was sitting in our apartment in a third world country, and it was nasty. It was just not pretty at all to live where we live. She looked out the window, and she just calmly looked and goes, I just don't understand what the draw is. My answer was one word, Jesus. My answer was Jesus. Jesus is the reason we do what we do. Jesus is the one who puts it into our hearts to care for the fatherless and care for the widows. Jesus is the one who puts it in our heart to do what we do, because every person in this room, every person in this county, every person in this state, in this world is created in the image of God. And God wants to draw them back into a right relationship with him, because that was broken in the Garden of Eden. And you may be sitting here this morning and God just pricked your heart and goes, I need Jesus. Is that who you need to say yes to? If it is, you're going to have an opportunity to do that. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for this morning. I thank you for the opportunity to share here at Calvary. I thank you for this church. I thank you for the people here. I thank you for the work that they're doing. I want to celebrate that work. I want to celebrate what you're already doing in the area of foster care. And God, how we work together now to go to that next level and go to that next stage of just partnership, of seeing how we can be a light to the fatherless here in this community. God, I thank you that this morning we know that your gospel is preeminent in this place. And we know that you want to change the hearts and lives of people. You want to stir your people up to action, and you want to stir the lost up to respond to you. God, I pray this morning that you will simply have your will and your way in this place for your name, your fame, and for your glory alone. It's in your name we pray. Amen.